I want to read something to you because it's very relevant. And this was written by John Carroll on quitefrankly.tv, the blog section. You can go and read and review yourself. This may be old news for some of you, but it may be a really well-timed review. Let's get into it, shall we? Here we go. GamerGate, the shot heard round the world, by John Carroll. In the wake, here's the quote, in the wake of the storming of the U.S. Capitol on January 6 by Trump supporters, bystanders on social media had plenty to say about the root causes and contributing factors that may have led to this flashpoint. Among those was GamerGate, according to Vox magazine. The year-long harassment campaign from 2014 to 2015 that eventually became subsumed into the greater rise of the alt-right movement online. This is how Vox covered January 6th. They even brought this up here. Fact check, though. True. Although harassment campaign is a misnomer, this is all John Carroll speaking now. Although harassment campaign is a misnomer, GamerGate can actually be described as the first shot of the revolution we still find ourselves struggling through today. Moreover, it is a microcosm of that revolution. What became or began as a reasonable request for accountability in public institutions unleashed a deluge of pent-up cultural hatred and uncovered a conspiracy which has essentially turned Western civilization into a socially engineered Ponzi scheme. In August of 2014, a gamer published a blog in which he accused his ex-girlfriend, herself an amateur game developer, of cheating on him. He alleged that her behavior was part of a quid pro quo wherein she traded sex with gaming journalists in return for positive coverage. As the story spread, the gamers began voicing concerns about a lack of integrity in their industry. They were suddenly met with a shocking level of vitriol, lies, censorship, and organization. Honest and fair questions were treated as sexist harassment and reciprocated with insults, and discussions of the scandals were ruthlessly suppressed online. But then the gamers did something the powers that be did not expect. They fought back. And this is actually a screenshot from Ready Player One, which is a great movie. It is a good movie. Okay, continuing. It quickly became apparent that this group was unlike anything militant leftism had engaged with before. They already treated as outcasts by society, the gamers were impervious to the threats and shaming tactics that had always forced others to cave. Even worse, nobody could figure out where to find them, or who they even were. The network of gamers was leaderless and anonymous, a phantom menace that forced their enemy to publicly double down. This posed a huge problem, as the only card the gaming media had to play was to continue lying. But lie they did, and as an army of feminist journalists from the gaming and now political media entered the fray, every last one of them had their feelings hurt in ways they could never have imagined. They labeled themselves as victims and martyrs, eventually taking their case all the way to the United Nations. Seriously, that happened. The wave of death threats they received was promptly investigated by the FBI, but even that organization, rotten to the core and with a penchant for political witch hunts, came up with nothing. One of the more hilarious aspects of the whole fiasco was that many of the gamers weren't ideologically driven or even that motivated. Oftentimes, the histrionic women, simply fished for opinions that they knew would upset them. Then they became upset after said opinions were received, thus furthering the number of quote-unquote harassment claims. It was the feminists themselves, not the gamers, who eventually crafted the feminists versus gamers narrative in the media. And there's, of course, the now famous Anita Sarkeesian, who is just all these, and then Zoe Quinn. Fuck them all. As Breitbart's Milo Yiannopoulos reported, this is another reason why I wanted to have Milo on the show, not just to talk about his conversion, his supposed conversion. I wanted to talk about this. He was huge on GamerGate. Man, this brings me back. I almost wish it was 2014 again. As Breitbart's Milo Yiannopoulos reported, Quote, instead of addressing allegations of corruption, examining their own prejudices, and giving consideration to an industry-wide failure to provide any kind of acceptable service, the games press rounded on its own readers, accusing them of bigotry and misogyny, and refusing to allege or acknowledge that the community was sick of being lectured to and guilt-tripped on a daily basis by hypocrites and liars. Watching the fallout on blogs, in forums, and on Twitter, it's tough to understand the extent of the shockwaves from all of this, or the rift that has opened up between writers and readers as a result of the left. Left-wing journalists reflexively defending their ideological allies. Gamers have uncovered evidence of such widespread corruption and conflicts of interest that the gaming blogs may never recover from it. The response from reporters, for the most part, denial and dismissal, is akin to mass professional suicide. That's the end of the Breitbart quote from Milo Yiannopoulos. I'll just stop there for a second to say, yeah, this is exactly what we're still seeing today. This is why nobody believes anything. And this was a launching point for a generation. You know, everybody, we were not really paying attention to much. This generation of gamers, at least, was not really paying attention to much of what was going on in the news. Once this started coming out, we saw the organization there and how it was tying into greater levels of media and the culture and Hollywood and elsewhere, how it was all connected. There was a line connected to everything. It started becoming a major flashpoint and a red pill for a gigantic younger generation who had otherwise been pretty apolitical and not interested at all. It was huge, really, really huge. A blatant example of that widespread corruption happened about 2 weeks after the scandal broke, when over a dozen media outlets seemed to collude by simultaneously publishing articles declaring that gamers are dead. This wave of articles and the immense backlash that they drew launched GamerGate onto a national stage. The collusion was confirmed a month later when Yiannopoulos published the names found on Game Journal Pros, a mailing list of 150 journalists and industry leaders, including those at the outlets in question. The plot soon thickened when a video by Sargon of Akkad linked those names to an international think tank called DIGRA, I forget how, I don't know, Digital Games Research Association. DIGRA had previously promoted academic papers about how to use critical theory, yes, Marxist critical theory, to deconstruct the identity of the gamer, which academia described as straight, white, and male. Those same papers were then cited by the gamers are dead pieces. The chart below can be viewed in a higher resolution here. So, yeah, you're talking about critical theory. You're talking about all the same things that we're talking about now that have been spun off into critical race theory and whatever. It's all the same thing. They wanted full spectrum dominance of a culture, of a planet. And they went out and they made sure that they got it. And to deconstruct all of this stuff and break people down into these demographics, it just started waking everyone up. This is when things got dark. When some of the more enterprising gamers determined to find the truth, they found out how deep GamerGate rabbit hole just went. They found that the social deconstruction of the gamer identity was done to make video games attractive to people of all backgrounds, so as to get a larger segment of the population playing them. Once this was achieved, video games were set to become an important component of Common Core, the agenda to force working-class Americans into a single educational standard. In reality, a mission of DIGRA is to figure out how video games can be used to control people, then repackage that knowledge for consumption by making it seem positive and needed. Just as the gaming media used the information gathered by DIGRA to influence public opinion, lobbyists use that information to promote Common Core legislation in Congress. It's huge. It really is. Gigantic. This two-pronged approach engineered the government to provide what the public was engineered to demand. Say that again. This two-pronged approach engineered the government to provide what the public was engineered to demand. The money trail behind these efforts leads to an organization the quite frankly audience has become intimately familiar with that over the past few years. According to a 2014 Washington Post article, quote, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation didn't just bankroll the development of what became known as the Common Core state standards. With more than $200 million, the foundation also built political support across the country, persuading state governments to make systemic and costly changes, end quote. The foundation's Wikipedia page further explains, quote, as part of its education-related initiatives, the foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates, has funded journalists, think tanks, lobbying organizations, and governments. There's plenty of stuff here for you all to read there, too, including a couple of screenshots from the boards. All of a sudden, it made perfect sense why so many people would tank their careers and reputations to defend a nobody who cheated on her boyfriend. It was all part of a cover-up. There was much more to GamerGate that can't be covered here. But by now, the gist of the story should be clear. It was the first iteration of a cycle that has only intensified, in which people are gaslit by the media after complaining about problems in their communities, then discover a conspiracy behind the lies. It was also the first time a large group of normal, non-political people took the time to actually study extremist left-wing groups like radical feminists and the social justice warriors that drive them too, and realize just how absolutely batshit crazy they all are. To this day, GamerGate is still deeply triggering to the far left. It revealed their psychopathy as they attacked innocent people and then took deep personal offense and reframed themselves as the victims. When those people fought back, they reframed themselves as the victims. To make matters worse, their opponents were able to formulate a blueprint to defeat them and have used that blueprint in years since to drive them back to the brink of insanity. After decades of easily steamrolling their opponents, GamerGate represented their first true defeat in the culture war. Just the name of the scandal arouses a primal fear in their subconscious, a fear of not having control, and which sends them into a rage. That fear is the actual source of their comically tragic reactions to everything that we do, and one day that fear will ultimately destroy them. Thank you once again, John Carroll, for some wonderful, wonderful reporting on things that are old, new, and still relevant. That's it. I mean, hey, it's the same. It's why those lefty losers at places like Vox will bring up GamerGate to start talking about and breaking down the psychology behind January 6th, even though we see the cover-up that is now at this point too. So they're going to bring that up just like they bring up Pizzagate. They bring up Pizzagate to snuff out any legitimate questions about child trafficking on an industrial scale, not only on a worldwide scale, on a worldwide level, but especially here as an epicenter. They bring that up. All of their friends at Vox and the Daily Beast, they scoff and they evade and they disrupt and they obfuscate. And they throw all these gates out, and they throw all of these things that they hate with every fiber of their being, because they have never been able to. It has only caused them harm. But there are dwindling masses of people who watch and listen to their bullshit. Those are the only ones who really think that this is worth a damn. We know the real truth.